Dear friends, good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening to our seminar on the spheres of Dante. This is a part 5 of our seminar, and tonight we are discussing the sphere of Saturn. Before we start, let's catch up to where we're standing in this evolution of the Divine Comedy. In Canto number 11, the poets, they descend further and they come to a group of broken boulders, behind which they rest a bit so that they can become accustomed to the foul stench that is rising from the lower circles. Dante sees a headstone with an inscription: I guard Anastasius, once Pope, he whom Thonius led to the straight road. While resting for a moment, Virgil explains the structure of hell, especially that of lower hell. Virgil explains that there are other, smaller circles which comprise the last 3 circles beyond the wall that begins the 6th circle. So we remember that Dante and Virgil got to the gates of the city of Dis. Those gates had been closed. But then a messenger from the heavens descended, opened those gates, and enabled the prophets to continue moving forward. There is a specific mention of cracked rocks. Cracked rocks, in one of our previous instances, a student had shared that the moment he heard cracked rocks, the one thing that came to his mind was the moment in which the rock from the sepulcher of the great master Jesus opened or cracked open at the moment of resurrection. And it so happens that this cracked rock here speaks about the descent of the Christ, and as the Christ enters and assumes ownership of the actions, the thoughts, the sentiments of the practitioner. But Dante and Virgil, they then cross another river, which is the river, the Phlegethon. And this Phlegethon is the river that burns. So as they walk into this 7th sphere, this particular sphere is characterized because there are lesser spheres within it. There is one for those who are violent against the neighbors and against the property of their neighbors. There is a lesser sphere that is for those who commit violence against themselves. And then there is an even tighter sphere for those who commit violence against God, art, and nature. So for all practical purposes, the sphere of Saturn is a sphere where the souls of the violent all go. So let's see what happens as the story continues. Dante and Virgil are crossing the Phlegethon, this river of blood that burns. The first round features sinners against neighbors, murderers, and the makers of war. Dante makes no distinction here between the punishment of those who commit acts of violence against people and those who commit acts of violence against property. There is no clear difference. But nevertheless, because it is an act of violence against our neighbor, the one that the great master has told us to love as we should love ourselves, well, the punishment is similar. But here, the first round also houses all those who are guilty of arson, plunder, extortion. There is Nessus, who explains that the souls that are boiling in the river of blood, they were people that were the kings of bloodshed and despoilment. So all of these violent souls are boiling in this particular river, and there are centaurs along the bed of the river. There are centaurs that are set in the higher grounds and alongside the river, and every time one of those souls tries to get out of those boiling waters, they throw those spears, arrows against them to force them to get back and submerge themselves into the boiling waters. The centaur here is a very significant symbolic creature because it is half man, half beast. And it is using the very same sexual libido, the very same creative energy to take those souls and force them to expiate. These souls are going through the consequences of that poisonous fire that exists in each and every one of us. That poisonous fire is known as the arsenic sulfur. Here in the first chamber, we will speak about the arsenic sulfur. If you have not heard it yet in any of the lectures, and as we go into the second chamber, we dedicate plenty of time to speak of the metallic soul of the mercury, and of course, the dry mercury and the arsenic sulfur. Let it suffice that these waters boil, because that arsenic sulfur, that poisonous fire, is the fire of our own bestialities. This is the fire of our animal cruelties. This is all of our lack of love and kindness. Now, the second circle here within the seventh sphere houses all those who have sinned against themselves with suicide. This is the extreme violence against oneself. And here, this particular sphere characterizes itself because all of these souls, all of these shades, look like trees. They appear like a forest of dry trees. And we wondered, why is it that they appear as a forest? Why do they appear as a tree? Well, we looked at the etymology, as you know that we so often do. And we found that forest comes from this Latin foris that means outside. And the question was, outside of what? Because here we have the shades that have become like a tree, but they are trapped within the sphere. And it is that these souls are so far outside from the light of the Creator that as they attempt to mimic what is the tree of life, they fall outside all of its grace. And these trees go through tremendous sufferings. Look what happens to Dante and Virgil. Because Dante and Virgil now enter into a pathless wood. It says, this dismal wood of strange black leaves, misshapen branches, and poisonous branches barren of fruit. Dante pulls a small branch off from a large thorn tree, and there is a voice in pain and lamentation that says, "Why are you tearing me? Why are you breaking me apart?" And then there is a gush of blood that comes from the tree. A gush of blood and the voice of lamentation. This is the expiation, and this is the release of those residual fires that exist still as the energy of those psychological aggregates. The voice asked Dante, "How come you have no pity? Why are you doing this to me?" And in compensation for the wound, for the pain that shade had just suffered, Virgil approaches the shade, the shadow, and he says, "Tell Dante your story. Share it with Dante so that when he gets out of here and once again comes to see the light of the sun, that he can share it with others as he walks around the face of the earth." And the spirit, being moved, narrates his story. That particular shade states, "I used to be a minister to Frederick II. And I was absolutely faithful and honest to Frederick. But the envy of the court, because they could not bribe this minister to doing their own wishes, well, they turned Frederick against him. And because he was not able to bear the pain of losing the trust of Frederick II, in sorrow, he killed himself." This is a very meaningful story because there are many times throughout our lives in which we feel that we have disappointed someone. Sometimes we feel that we have disappointed ourselves. In others, that we have disappointed our children or our spouse or our parents. And when others even tell us that they are disappointed in us, we have felt the sting of those words. And the problem is not the disappointment. The problem that comes with that is the disappointment combined with the shame. As if someone had actually hurt this image that we had created of us. As if we had given so much importance to this definition that we have crafted of what we were, that the moment that reality struck and we came to see ourselves the way that we truly are, that fallacy had crumbled and we had felt exposed. This is important because the psychological aggregates of defeatism, of shame, will do everything that they can to take away any potential opportunity you may have in front of you of transformation, of improvement, of exercising kindness and love. And in this case, this particular character, submerged in that despair, worried about that shame, in that sorrow, committed suicide. The imprisoned spirit replied that when the soul is torn from the body by suicide, it descends into the vestibule of hell. It presents itself before Minos, and Minos will wrap its tail 7 times, indicating that that soul must descend immediately into the 7th circle. And right there, the soul falls to the ground, sprouts, and it grows. But it grows as a very bad seed. And as it grows, the harpies, they arrive and they start eating the black leaves. And every black leaf that is eaten, it's tearing that soul apart and gives it tremendous pain. So we see here that as they cross the Phaeton, the souls of those very violent ones, the kings of bloodshed, those who have committed arson and damage, they are burning intensely. And every time they try to escape, the energy itself, the catabolic forces of nature themselves, forces them to stay there to see them further dissolved. And then those who commit violence against themselves and take away their lives are sent here, and they are born as a tree, but as a tree that bears no fruit. This teaches us that our psychological aggregates, as they get to Minos, they don't go through the sphere of the moon and then Mercury and Venus and the sun. No. Each one of these psychological aggregates goes exactly where it belongs. And those aggregates of lust, they will stay right there in the sphere of Mercury. Those psychological aggregates of anger, they go into the 5th sphere, and they are there until they consume themselves. And then, in this case, all of these aggregates of violence against our neighbors, against ourselves, etc., against God, they fall directly into this particular sphere that is the sphere of Saturn. To give you perspective, let's look at the reflection of the tree of life. We know that the Holy Okidanok, which is the ray of creation, it emanates in the realm of the absolute. Remember, the realm of the absolute exists beyond the current consideration of what is God. It exists in a space where there is unmanifested space and uncreated light. This uncreated light is completely indefinable. It is what is known as the agnostos theos. Theos is God, agnostos is unknowable. This is the unknowable source. It is unknowable except to itself. And it is said that when the uncreated light initiates the dawn of the new cosmic day, the Manvantara. It unfolds upon itself, and it contemplates its own creation, and the creation from the unmanifested light is the uncreated space. The uncreated space today is this dark matter that scientists speak of, that they know that it exists. They know that 95% of the universe is that dark matter, but it is. They know it's there because of mathematics, but it is unperceivable. And upon the contemplation of the unmanifested abstract space, the two of them fuse together, and the emergence is the Holy Okidanok. The Okidanok is the Ein Sof Aur. This Ein Sof Or is that ray of creation, and it descends from the Absolute, and the first crystallization is at the like and image of the Absolute, and that is the Ancient of Days. That is our Father. But which Father? This is our real being. This is the Father of our Father. In terms of what Christians in general speak of today, this is God. And from God itself, following the same manifestation of the Agnostos Theos, the Father unfolds, and we see the manifestation of the Christ, of the cosmic Christ. And itself, from the cosmic Christ emerges the Holy Spirit in the sphere of Binah. And then, in that sphere of Binah, we find the influence of Saturn. This is why Saturn is the ancient Chronos. This is why Saturn is that manifestation of the angel of death. For you to be able to get into this particular sphere, you have to be very dead. Very, very dead. And as we continue descending down the tree of life, you will see that we get at the very bottom to the sphere of Malkut. It is that sphere that is split in four. Malkut is the threshold to the third order of worlds, or the Trito cosmos. So by correspondence, notice how deep is the sphere of Saturn in the underworld. At this level, there are 672 laws. Wow. If in dreams, we only get to the vestibule of hell, and right then and there, we experience 96 laws. And you know that when you're experiencing a nightmare, you cannot move your arms. You try to run, your legs don't move. You try to scream, the voice does not come out. And just that intensity is enough to return you to the physical body, just like that. Imagine the incredible force of nature that exists within the sphere of Saturn. Let's take a look at the tree of life. We start at the great realm of the uncreated light, the unmanifested light, the absolute abstract space. This is the protocosmos. This is the most original, the fundamental, the very first order of worlds. Everything emerges from here. And these three are the 13th, the 12th, and the 11th door. Ain, Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof Aur. The Ain is the 13th door. That is, there cannot be anything higher than that, because it would be impossible. If there were anything higher or beyond the Ain, it would be even greater than the unmanifested light. And we know that that is not possible at all. So here in the protocosmos, what we see is a space in which only the Paramartasatyas can enter. Who are Paramartasatyas? Well, those are the ones who have achieved the absolute truth. Great masters like Jesus. Jesus, who has come over and over again to repeat the same cosmic drama. How many times has the great master Jesus done it? 7 times. And he cannot do it anymore. It has been written, 7 is the maximum amount of times that any one of these great masters can descend and do all of this work of the 3 mountains and continue with their exaltation. Because beyond that, they can commit very serious crimes. We will discuss more of that in the second chamber. But what leads them to become Paramartasatyas, to be able to embody that absolute truth? Well, the condition of Paranishpana. What is that? Absolute perfection. That means that there is no trace of a psychological aggregate there. I mean, if those entities of the darkness were even aware of what they were dealing with, a master that is on his way to complete his 7th resurrection. What? There would have been no angels, dark angels, tempting him, saying, "Ito, we'll get to the top of that church and jump, because it's written that if you jump, the angels will come and save you." And Jesus, in kindness, looked at that creature and said, "Dude, no, do not tempt your God. Do not tempt God. You are here to serve." So this is the protocosmos. And from this protocosmos, we see the emergence of the first triangle in the tree of life. This is the Aiocosmos. And notice that here we have the crown of life, we have intelligence, and we have wisdom. We have Keter, Chokmah, and Binah. And we are highlighting Binah because Binah here is a manifestation of the Holy Spirit. Chokmah is the manifestation of the cosmic Christ. And Binah is of our interest in today's conversation. Because in each one of these spheres, there is a manifestation of God that has a specific name. In the English Bibles, the translations have taken away so much wisdom because it's always referred to as either God or Lord, in some cases Adonai. That's it. Very few other names are mentioned. But in the Kabbalistic tradition, these names remain untouched. And in the sphere of Keter, the manifestation of God is known as Echeye Asher Echeye. That translates as I am that I am. But in our nothingness, we should never refer to that manifestation like that. We would be better off saying, it is that which is. That would be more suitable. In the sphere of Chokmah, in that realm of the cosmic Christ, the manifestation of God is Yod-Hava, Yahovah. And in the realm of Binah, it is Yahovah Elohim. These are the gods and goddesses that emanate from Jehovah. These are the gods and goddesses of Jehovah. And here on earth, the influence that governs in this particular sphere is that of Archangel Orifiel. Orifiel is the angel of death. Of course, with death, there is a darkness, but it is not a darkness of the tenebrous ones. This is a darkness that is deeply associated with wisdom. And, well, there is also the manifestation of the number 7, and thus we see the Sabbath. But because we have spoken here of Binah, and in Binah we see that there is the presence of a masculine and a feminine principle, Abba, the Father, and Aima, in the Kabbalistic tradition, we can look at other representations of these masculine and feminine principles as symbols that have some relationship to the internal work of our transformation. And so we show you on the screen Samson and Delilah. We are all fairly familiar with what this story is. We must have heard it at least once when we were growing up. We know that Samson was a very powerful man. He used to have long hairs, and he fell in love with a woman. This woman, Delilah, well, she seduced him, and as he fell asleep on her lap, she held onto his hairs, his long hairs, and she cut them. Samson awakened. He awakened blind, and he was still carrying some power, and with his power, he crumbled the temple. Wow, that story right there, that summarizes the 78 books that Samael has written. Because Delilah is in reality Lilith, Laila, she is the dark night. She is temptation. She is infrasexuality. And when Samson falls asleep, that is the very same sleep that we know that Quetzalcoatl experienced when he consumed pulque, when he was with his wife. That sleep is the very same event of consuming the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. So we know that Samson fell. But what is so important about Samson? Well, his name is Shimshon or Shemesh Aun, and that is a symbol of the sexual strength. Notice the Hebrew characters that make up Samson's name. This character Shem, that S in the Hebrew alphabet, notice that it looks like three flames. Here we see Ava, Aima, we see Chokmah, we see Keter, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, right there. And Samson was a worker of the great work. He had long hair because he belonged to the sect of the Nazarenes. And the Nazarenes, part of their distinction was the long hair. We know this because we have seen so many images of Jesus of Nazareth with that long hair. And that hair, a symbol of chastity, a symbol of purity. So the dark night, the infrasexuality, Lord Shemeshaum, those Luciferic fires dominated him the same way that they influenced those beings in the third subrace of the Lemurian race. And he fell, and she cut his hair. And what does that mean? He abused of his sexuality, and he was blind. He lost all of his powers. This is what happens to him. These are the enemies of the Sabbath. Enemies of the Sabbath. Listen what is written in the book of Leviticus. It says, when a man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his whole body with water, and he will be unclean till evening. When a man lies with a woman and there is an emission of semen, both must bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. Now, somebody once asked, why until evening? What is so critical about evening? Okay, let's keep in mind that when these books were written, we did not have people going to sleep at midnight. People usually, went to sleep soon after sunset. And once we go to sleep, we know that the soul leaves the body, and at that moment, the ethereal body restores the physicality. The ethereal body is responsible for repairing all of the damage that we do to the body. And when there is an emission of semen, we are creating a lacking of key nutrients, of key substances in the body that if we had left them there, the micro laboratories, meaning the endocrine system, in this case speaking about the sexual gonads, they would have transformed that substance into hormones that would have invaded the bloodstream and would have nourished glands in other aspects of the endocrine system, bringing about even a better functionality of the body. So they must bathe themselves in water. This reminds us of a seminar that we have been delivering in the second chamber for a few weeks now that is very specific to baptism. A pact of waters, a commitment to work on the adequate transmutation of the waters. So here we have to regain those waters. We have to take them and transform them, transmute them again. So yes, we have to clean our body physically, because wherever this semen lands, it creates focal points for the birth and growth of larvae. Larvae that will always incite the same act that led them to come to life. This is why we like to use sulfur in our shoes, so that if there's any larvae that has attached to us, either because we have created them or because they have binded to us by contact with other people, that we can see the ethereal vapors of the sulfur destroy them. Okay, but enough of this. The enemies of the Sabbath are those who spill the Hermetic cup. Now, the haters of the cross are those who abhor any type of sexual connection that is based on normal sexuality. And here we see that when we have two similar polarities coming together, enjoying their bodies only as an instrument to generate sensations, and on top of that, an emission of semen, these are the haters of the cross. Samael says, these are unproductive seeds. He says, these seeds, they will not bear fruit. That does not mean that we have to reject anyone who happens to identify themselves as gay or lesbian or whatever. Certainly not. We must say we are not any better than what they are. We just have an opportunity. And if we do not abandon our old infrasexual ways, well, the consistent turns of the wheel of samsara are eventually going to lead us to create an electropsychic design that would result in exactly that. Because as we abuse of the physicality, the physical body has to start making changes to compensate for what we are extracting. Imagine if we have an organ like the prostate that at that point of connection, we have a chakra that is connected directly into the astral plane, a chakra that has something that is called a Buddhic mesh to filter the energies that descend from the fifth dimension into that chakra to energize our creative waters. Energies that come in the flavors of tattvas, whether it is Vayu or Apas, Prithvi, Rajas. And as those energies come in at a specific size of that prostate, well, that is enough, let's say, surface area to take a very defined volume of this liquid and allow enough contact for this energy to electrify the sexual creative water so that we can transmute it better. But what happens when we know that there is a specific amount of time that those waters must be contained within that very small container in the body, and we are constantly spilling? Well, evidently, that size would not be enough to be able to provide enough energy to electrify those waters enough so that they can become useful. So the more we throw away, the ethereal body knows that it has to continue sending energy, and because that amount of container is not enough, the prostate then has to start growing. Because the more it grows, the more surface area it provides to be able to electrify those creative waters within the organism. There are many men who suffer from BPH. It is called benign prostate hypertrophy because it grows. Because they have abused enough of their creative body, of their body and of their creative energies, and they have extracted enough of those waters with enough frequency that now the prostate has to grow to be able to accommodate more of that energy so that it can provide the right electrification, perhaps in a shorter amount of time. This is all very, very interesting. But again, these haters of the cross, these are seeds that bear no fruit. Let's see what we find in different chapters of the sacred writings. In the book of Psalms, it says, "Oh, let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just, for the righteous God trieth the hearts and the reins." This righteous God is the cosmic Christ. It is looking at the heart and it is looking at the kidneys. What is in blue, our apologies for that very poor quality selection of a color because it is unreadable on the screen. It reads, "I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins," the kidneys, "even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruits of his doings." This is what it has been written in the book of Jeremiah in chapter 17, verse 10. And then in the book of Revelation, we see the same message a third time. It says, "And I will kill her children with death." These are the children of the great whore that is referred to as Babylon. These are the children of this race. "And all the churches," all of the chakras, "shall know that I am He which searches the reins, the kidneys, and the hearts, and I will give unto every one of you according to your works. It looks at the heart and it looks at the kidneys. In the newer versions of the Bible, it says the heart and the mind. Well intended, they made the change because they did not understand. Why is it that it says the kidneys? It says the kidneys because at the level of the suprarenal glands, whenever you abuse of the sexual creative waters and you're spilling them, it is those two glands, the ones that will create an effect that will turn your aura a red bloody color. If any one of you has ever taken a picture of your aura, if you have taken a picture of your chakras in any one of these pseudo spiritual stores, and you get a red aura, go back and think about what you have been doing. Because a red aura is an indication of abusing of the sexuality. It is the spilling of the sexual creative waters. It has to do with fornication. Yes, they will give you a piece of paper that says, oh, you're very passionate. you love communication. You love human contact. Of course, it's going to say that because that is the right way to justify the mistake. But that red color comes from the kidney. So what is the Christ looking? It is looking at merits and it is looking at the quality of the transmutation. And this is why Samael gives us the Aztec croak as a mantra that we can use to transmute. This is why he gives us pranayama, he gives us hamsa, he gives us the runes tir and bar, he gives us the rune ario, etc., 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 so that we can transmute. Because this transmutation does not only have to happen in matrimony. Anybody who's single, we have already learned, and we have said this many times before, anyone single has the ability to complete all 9 initiations of minor mysteries, the test of the guardians of the threshold, the tests of the elements, the hall of fire, the hall of justice, the test of Dyrene, all of that on their own, and then their innermost will ask the great masters for an opportunity to walk into the space of the major mysteries. It is then when the practitioner is going to receive a guru that is going to be working with him and the spouse, with her and the spouse, so that they can transmute those creative energies better. So individually, you can walk yourself up to the door of the major mysteries. And that is a lot. So there has to be transmutation. Chant your mantras, do your runes, breathe, transmute. That is the best advice that we can give. And of course, eliminate your defects. So Dante and Virgil are here standing before these trees, and Dante starts gathering the leaves and returning them to the bush. And then the poets pass to the other edge of the wood. And here is the beginning of a very desolate plain. Dante looks fearfully about him. Many souls are on this plain, and some are lying down, and some are crouching, and some are wandering restlessly. There are flakes of fire that are falling onto this desert. And as the fire falls from the sky on this sphere, it burns. And it increases the pain of all of these souls that are being punished because of their violence against God. This particular 7th sphere, you get there by crossing that flegeton that is a river of burning red blood waters. And then those others are trapped as trees, completely immobilized and being torn to pieces by the harpies. And then those who commit those crimes against God, crimes against the Holy Spirit, they are burned by a fire that is constantly descending on them and that they have no way of escaping. The color of this particular sphere is blood red. These are the colors in this 7th sphere. And that is because this is the color of our animal passions. Again, the same color that is generated by the suprarenal glands whenever we fornicate. And here is where we find the haters of the cross, Who are the ones who are committing this violence against God? What actions are these? Well, masturbation is one of them. The physical body goes through a lot of efforts to take the food that you are consuming. Listen to this. The food that you are consuming, the air that you're breathing, and the impressions that you are transforming, and it takes those three nourishments and generates some quality of your creative waters. So you can imagine that in the beginning, the waters are going to be black. But if you start being more measured as you consume the food stuff, we start making a good distinction between what is enjoyment and what is satisfaction. When we bring an element of gratefulness, suddenly we're no longer eating a 24-ounce steak. Suddenly we eat exactly what we know that the body needs, and we know when is that enough is enough. That is a great change. If we are breathing, and we're breathing intelligently, because we are singing mantras and we are breathing rhythmically, harmoniously with a relaxed body, well, of course, the body's going to make better use of that prana. And then, if we are transforming impressions, well, now you can imagine that somebody right there is doing a lot of superior work. Of course, the quality of the water is going to be more refined. But if we're still brutal, if we're still thinking like we used to think 30 years ago, then really not much has changed. So masturbators, every time that there is masturbation and there is an emission of semen, that is crime against the Holy Spirit. You're taking the waters of life and you're burning them. You're just throwing them away. If there is castration, that is a violence against the Holy Spirit. Because now you are physically disabling the body from being able to use these particular substances. You have damaged the machine. Sodomites, sexual connection through other places than where it should be, that is violence against the Holy Spirit. There are many other different dark energies at play involved at that. Nothing good can come from that. Things like genetic manipulation, that is a crime against the Holy Spirit as well. That genetical code enables these bodies to do a transformation of energies, cosmic energies that are received by the body, transmuted, transformed, and delivered to the planet. But if we start taking animals and changing their genetic code, if suddenly you're going to eat some fruits that now have genes that belong to squids, that is a problem. There is nothing immediately seen, but we have to remember that we have 48 pairs of chromosomes. Yeah, you may say, wait, I read in a book. I remember when I studied this, there were 46, 23 and 23. Yes, that is true, but there is one additional pair that is ethereal in nature because there is a connection with the ethereal body. And if you have squid DNA in a tomato, that is a problem. If you have other DNA in a potato so that the potato can be fluorescent at night, that creates another problem. Now, these organic bodies, speaking organic in terms of organic chemistry, because they, of course, they have carbon and all of the carbon structures. Well, now they are not able to receive those energies and process them correctly. We are creating deficits to the planet. If there is pedophilia, yes, that is a crime against the Holy Spirit. Just imagine the cruelty. Taking the body of a child that is not even developed, a child that is using all of its sexual creative energy for its development. And that child is being tainted. Because it is not only the damage into the body of the child, it is the damage in the sphere of the intellect, in the sphere of the emotion. It is damage to the instinctive center. It is damage to the motor center, because now that child is experiencing things that they were not supposed and not meant to experience. Of course, that is a crime against the Holy Spirit. If a woman is having sex on her period, that constitutes a crime against the Holy Spirit as well. Because at that time, the body of the woman is getting rid of deleterious substances. We will not encourage you to do this, dear ladies. But if you ever transmute it, well, in your period, you would experience the negative consequences immediately. The headache that you would get, you will know it. If you have done it by mistake, you have already experienced this truth. And of course, when the man or the woman go into the sexual act when their physical body is not ready, that means that the man violates his body so that the phallus can respond. Not cool. Or the woman violates her body so that the Bartling glands can do the work and can release that special moisture that is responsible for closing the electrical circuit between the phallus and the yoni. But another crime against the Holy Spirit is that of fraud. Because fraud is the result of promises, energies, and efforts into results that are never materialized. And fraud constitutes a crime like that. A good example of fraud is Karl Marx. Karl Marx, a really well-intended guy, suffering by his own ignorance. Well-intended, but this is what the positive egos do. So let's not get fooled by our positive values. Karl Marx was a Jewish fanatic. His positive values, all of those egos of religion and veneration, etc., well, they were very active. And as a Jewish fanatic, he thought that he should do something to eliminate all other religions so that people will naturally gravitate towards Judaism. Create a doctrine so that people can see that their religions are useless and they can come and enjoy the wealth, the trove of wisdom that is Judaism. These are positive values. Very well intended. He wanted something really good for everyone, but certainly horrendous actions, nefarious consequences. His materialistic doctrine is all that. And Samael says that as he descended in his astral body into this sphere of hell, he came across Karl Marx. What are you doing here? Marx was saying, I am not a Marxist. Karl Marx, I am not a Marxist. Most people don't know that when he died and he got buried with his funeral procession was vested with all the rigors of a rabbi. That's Karl Marx for you. So here, a fanatic that created this fraud, the materialistic doctrine. And now we're seeing clearly where that has taken the world. So friends, we have come to about the top of the hour. And this is what we wanted to share with you tonight when it comes to this particular sphere, that is the sphere of Saturn. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us this evening, and may all beings be happy.